In this video, we are going to cover equations of parallel and perpendicular lines. Remember, do not begin this lesson until after you've completed the pre-unit skills check in Delta Math. It will review slope and some necessary skills before we dive into this one. Okay, so to review real quick, if you think about parallel lines, I'm going to fill in this chart and go backwards because we're going to use the diagram to help us come up with an example and then the general rule for slopes. So parallel lines would be two lines that extend forever and never intersect. Okay, so these two lines will never touch. This is a positive slope because it's going up and to the right. So we might say that this has a slope of 2/3. And we'll call this line 1 and this line 2. So if slope 1, or if the slope of line 1 is 2/3, then the slope of line 2 also has to be 2/3. So when we talk about slope, remember slope is rise over run. So we're saying we're going up 2 and over 3, up 2 and over 3. In order for those not to intersect, the second line has to do the exact same thing. Otherwise, when you get way out here in these big numbers, they're going to end up crossing each other. Okay, so if we know that they have to have the same slopes, then we would say that the slopes are the same. Okay, and it doesn't matter whether they are positive, negative, zero slope, or undefined slope. Okay, perpendicular lines look a little different. So with perpendicular lines, we would have maybe one line going this direction. And then remember, perpendicular means a right angle. So this other line would have to come like this in order to make a right angle. Okay. In this case, if this is my slope, if my slope of line 1 is positive 2/3 again, okay, then I know that my slope of line 2 can't be positive, right? It has to be perpendicular, which means now we have to have a negative slope. And then instead of going up 2 over 3, we're actually going to go down 3 and over 2. So it would be a negative 3/2. So if you notice, okay, we have switched the sign. So if we started with a positive slope, perpendicular is going to be negative. If you start with negative, perpendicular is going to be positive. So they're always going to be negative from each other, okay, or opposites. And then we also have to flip the rise and run. So our rise becomes the run and the run becomes the rise. And so negative reciprocals. Remember, that word is what we call it when we flip our fraction. Okay, so let's run through some examples. So for this first one, it says line S passes through the points -4, 0, that's this point right here, and 5, 2, that's this point right here. Construct a line through point J, which is -2, 4. That's this line right here. That is parallel. Parallel is going to be key. So we know that we want to go through point J. And if we're talking parallel, we know that our line is going to kind of go in this direction. You can't eyeball it. You have to have an exact line. And the way to do that is to use the slope. So the first thing we're going to do is calculate the slope of this line here. And remember that we said, slope is M, and we said that slope is rise over run. And so if we look at rise over run, that's the same as how much did our Y value change over how much did our X value change, okay? For this one, I know that I have a positive slope, and I can count my boxes to see, so I have to go up 2, so that means my delta Y is 2. And I have to go to the right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that tells me the slope of my given line is 2/9. Now parallel, we learned, means that it has to have the exact same slope. So the slope of my new line, or line 2, also has to be 2/9. All you have to do is go to the point they give you and count out your slope from there. So we're going to go up 2. And then we're going to go to the right 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is my second point. So I have point J and I have my second point. Now I'm going to go to my shapes tool and I am going to draw a segment. Make sure you choose the insert line tool. I'm going to connect these two to start with just to make sure I'm going through the right points. Then I'm going to choose the select tool. That way I can grab these points and extend them. Just make sure that before, oops, let go, there we go. Before you let go of it, make sure that you're going through the point that you want to go through. Okay. If you click on it, you'll get this pop-up menu. And if you click on the bars, you can put arrows on both ends and not have to draw them. Cami will do it for you. And then the last thing that we would do is we would just go ahead and put these parallel marks on them to say that both of these lines are parallel. Okay, let's look at the next one. This says line T passes through the points -3, 1, -1, sorry, -3, -1, so this point here, and -1, 7 is this point up here. Construct a line through point K, which is 4, 4, that is perpendicular to line T. Same process. We have to find the slope of line T. So the slope of our first line, or line T, we're going to do rise over run again. Again, it's a positive slope, so I should have a positive fraction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I went up 8. And then I went over 2. So that tells me I have a slope of 4, which is the same as 4 over 1. My new slope needs to be perpendicular. Okay, so that tells me the slope of my new line, or line 2, you could have named this 1, doesn't really matter, as long as you keep your lines straight. So perpendicular is negative reciprocal. So if this is a positive slope, perpendicular is going to have a negative slope. And if this is 4 over 1 for my rise over run, I'm going to flip that over and make it 1 over 4. And then I'm going to go back to my new point, point K, and just count out that slope. So remember, when we have a negative slope, one of your directions has to be negative. So if you go up 1, which is in the positive direction, you have to go to the left 4 in order to get a negative slope. And remember, in your mind, when you sketch this, it should be going downhill. If you don't have a line going downhill, if it's not a negative slope, then double check your work and make sure that you're plotting it correctly. If you choose to go down 1, that would be your negative value. So then you have to go to the right 4 and make it positive. Okay, so we need one direction to be positive, one direction to be negative. And then go back to your shapes and go ahead and sketch your line and then make the adjustments that you need. So we want to extend it out in both directions so that we have a line. We don't want a segment for this. And then I'm going to click on it and add the arrows. Come on, Cami. Add the arrows to the end to show that we have a line. And then remember, these are perpendicular, so I'm not going to put arrows on them because they're going different directions. Remember, the symbol to show perpendicular lines is where you finish the box in the corner.